Hi, good evening, everyone, and welcome. I'm Melanie Funk, Managing Director of Eczema Support Australia, and I'm really pleased to have you all here tonight. Eczema Support Australia is a national charity providing trusted information, connection, and advocacy for Australians living with eczema. And we're also proud to be a member of the Quality Use of Medicines Alliance. This webinar tonight has been made possible through the Quality Use of Medicines Alliance Eczema program, which is funded by the Australian Government Department of Health and Aged Care. And this webinar is all about helping you feel more confident and better supported in managing eczema, whether it affects you personally, your child, or someone you care for. Our goal tonight is to share evidence-based, practical information about eczema treatments, address some of the common concerns and questions that we know many people have, and also point you towards some reliable support and resources. Before we begin this evening, I'd just like to take a moment to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we meet today. And I'm joining you today from the region of the Yungan language group of people here on the Gold Coast. And I pay my respects to elders past and present. I'd also like to extend that respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining us this evening. Just a bit of housekeeping. You'll see that we have the Q&A feature open. Many of the questions we received ahead of time will be woven into our panel discussion tonight, and we hope to do our best to answer some live questions at the end as well. If we don't get to your specific question, please know that we plan on following up with you via email as well after the event. Our co-host and fellow Director of Eczema Support Australia, Marion, will be happy to receive your extra questions, and she will provide more information in the Q&A section as we go along too. Also, tonight's webinar is being recorded. We'll be sharing the recording and resources with you afterwards, so you can revisit anything that you might have missed or also share it with others. That would be great. And this evening, what you can expect is we're going to be covering some best practice eczema treatments and how to use them effectively, tackling common concerns like safety and long-term use of treatments, as well as talking about the emotional impact of eczema and highlighting the need for support and trusted resources that will help you navigate with more confidence. Now, we've brought together a fantastic panel of experts and lived experience voices to share tonight, and I'll be introducing them to you in just a moment. But before I introduce our panelists, I would love to know you a little bit more and get to know you a bit. So what I'd like to start with is a really quick poll about your expectations for tonight. I'm just going to launch that now, and you'll see that pop up on your screen, I hope. And if you could just let us know what's the main reason for you attending this webinar this evening, that would be really great to hear. And I'll just give you a few moments to do that. Great, everyone's found the buttons, excellent. And I can see the numbers shifting and changing and moving around. Wonderful. If it hasn't popped up on screen, share results. There we go. Let's have a look at that. Can we see anything now? Wonderful. All right, we might come back to that later, but it's good to see who's here and why you're here. Thank you. I have another poll for you really quickly before we move on. This is a really important poll. I'd really like to get your input onto this. We'd like to get a sense on how confident you're currently feeling about managing eczema. So let me launch that one. All right, so whether you're managing eczema for yourself or your child or someone you care for, there's no right or wrong answer in this poll. It just helps us to understand where you're at. And this will help guide our discussion a little bit tonight as well and make sure that we're addressing the areas that concern you the most. So we've got quite a spread there of people who between somewhat confident, not confident, slightly confident. So a real mixture there. Now, each of our guests brings a unique and important perspective to the table, and so we're really grateful for their time and their expertise. First, I'd like to introduce you to Jebin Weidinger, if you could wave. A nurse practitioner who specialises in eczema and allergy. Gem's got over 25 years of experience in healthcare with a really strong focus on child health. She leads the nurse practitioner-led eczema service in Perth Children's Hospital and has played a really key role in developing national resources to support families and professionals in managing childhood eczema. She's deeply passionate about parent education and support, and we're thrilled to have her insights tonight. Next, we have Associate Professor Li-Chien Wong, an experienced paediatric and adult dermatologist and co-founder of Sydney Skin. With over 25 years of clinical experience, Dr. Wong is also the head of dermatology at the Children's Hospital at Westmead. She will be sharing her experience on the causes and triggers of eczema, explaining the different roles of moisturisers and flare control creams, and helping to dispel some of those common myths around eczema management too. We're also joined by Associate Professor Sandra Salter, a pharmacist and academic at the University of Western Australia. Sandra's got a wealth of experience in clinical pharmacy and will be focusing on choosing the right treatment, sticking to an eczema care plan, and also addressing concerns around flare control creams, topics that we know are top of mind for many in our community. And bringing lived experience to the conversation tonight is Jamie Chesworth, who has navigated eczema his entire life. Jamie will share his personal journey and offer honest and practical advice for managing day-to-day living with eczema. So we're really grateful for his voice and the insights that he brings from the perspective of someone living with a condition. Now, we do also rely on our GP when we're unwell. And unfortunately, our other panelist, Dr. Annalise Willems, a general practitioner in Melbourne, is actually unwell herself this evening. However, we hope to have a follow-up session with her in the near future, as her special interest is also in dermatology, research and medical education. And finally, as I mentioned, I'm Melanie Funk, founder of Eczema Support Australia, and I'm also a mum of teenage twin boys who have severe eczema since birth. And my own journey navigating care, the confusion, but community has inspired me to create a place for support, advocacy and trustworthy information. So I'm really proud to be here tonight with such knowledgeable and compassionate group. So let's get started. I'm going to launch straight into things, and I'd like to start by with our dermatologist, Dr. Li-Chien Wong, who's going to help us by setting the scene about eczema management and treatment approaches recommended in the latest guidelines. So over to you, Li-Chien.
Thank you so much, Melanie. It's really wonderful to be part of tonight's presentation, and I thank everyone for giving up a Tuesday school night and a work night to be with us today. I'd like to start off with firstly talking about what is eczema, what causes eczema, and what are the triggers. We know that eczema is caused by a number of factors, the first and foremost being your genes, what you're made up of. And this is eczema being a chronic and genetic condition. And then we have environmental triggers that will cause a flare. We are also dependent on our skin barrier defect, which is present in eczema, and as well, what is happening to what we call our skin microbiome. And all of that will then determine whether you have a flare of your eczema. As this is a genetic condition, often you'll have other members of your family that will also be unfortunately suffering from eczema, and as well asthma or hay fever. And all three are what we call part of the atopic triad, and they go together. The risk of developing these other conditions of asthma and hay fever is higher if your eczema is severe and if it started early in life. So if you have this genetic predisposition of having eczema, and then you're exposed to certain environmental factors, you will then potentially get a flare of your condition. And these environmental factors that everyone, 100% of people will be triggered, includes sudden changes of weather. So from certainly very hot to very cold, like the weather we're having here in Sydney, or if you get sick, any sort of illness, be it a viral infection, a cough or a cold, vomiting, diarrhea, doesn't matter, that challenges your immune system and you can potentially get a flare of your eczema. Remember, when you're young, first 3 years of life, your child will have 6 to 12 viral infections per year. And that's just what happens. And so it can seem sometimes that your eczema, their eczema, is continuing to flare and there is no reprieve. And that's because of their continual viral infections. The other triggers are vaccinations, because it's an immune challenge, as well as rough clothing. So any rough clothing such as woolen jumpers, woolen scarves, beanies will trigger off a flare, as well as sand, contact with sand, carpet and grass. Perfumed products are also very triggering to eczema, and particularly be careful about scented washing powders or softeners or washing products for the household. Chlorinated water will also trigger a flare, so always moisturize before you put your child into swimming lessons in the pool. No lycra rashi because it traps the chlorinated water. As soon as they finish their lesson, rinse off, moisturize top to toe at the pool before popping them in the car to go home. If you have eczema, your skin barrier by definition is sensitive and defective, and therefore it's so important to replenish it by regularly moisturizing, and I'll talk more about this later. We also know how important it is to have what we call a diverse skin microbiome for healthy skin. Now, our normal skin microbiome is made up of millions of different bacteria and organisms, and they live in perfect harmony. I mean, we need diversity in life and on our skin. However, when you have eczema, you have one bully bacteria called staph or staphylococcus that seems to dominate. And the more it's present, the worse your eczema will be. However, if you use anti-inflammatory creams, otherwise called topical steroids, or flare control creams, this helps bring our skin microbiome back to a healthy, diverse population. How do we diagnose eczema? I mean, you will all know intrinsically what eczema is because you have lived experience. Eczema is itchy, it's red, it's scaly, it's horrid, and it usually starts around 3 months of age. In babies, it appears on the scalp and on the flexures, the extensor surfaces of the elbows and on the knees, whereas children, the older you get, will get more flexural involvement, so in the folds of their elbows and behind their knees. If you're an adult and you get eczema for the first time, it seems to affect predominantly your face and your hands. Now, eczema can be acute. That means it's weepy, it's swollen, it's inflamed, it's red, or it can be what we call chronic or lichenified, which means it's thickened skin. And that's because it's been so itchy for such a long time, and due to rubbing, it thickens your skin. Mild eczema will only affect a few areas. It's generally not particularly itchy, which is great, whereas moderate disease is more extensive in involvement. But severe disease is distressing. It disturbs sleep, your ability to function at work, concentrate at school. You have widespread redness and what we call excoriations, which is scratch marks. Now, we assess severity of eczema usually just clinically, but sometimes scores or questionnaires can be helpful. One of which is called the EASI score, or EASI, that stands for Eczema Area Severity Index Score. And it's a score from 0 to 72. Anything above 21 is considered severe. Anything above 50 is considered very severe. The other score that we use, and particularly when we're trying to put patients on PBS for biologics, such as dupilumab or upadacitinib, is a score called the DLQI, or the Dermatology Life Quality Index. And this is a questionnaire that we ask patients or children to fill out to say how it is that eczema is impacting their life, their sleep, their ability to form relationships, friendships. And it's so important because it tells us, as well as the government, that you deserve biologic or more targeted treatment. I really can't stress enough how important it is to get an early diagnosis, because it means that you or your child or your loved one will get treated earlier and start feeling better sooner. So how do we treat? First, the most important component in treatment is to moisturize, because this restores our skin barrier, as we talked about. Moisturizing needs to be regular, applied daily, and you have to choose one that you like and that you want to use, but it has to be non-fragranced. Consider where you live. If you live in Darwin, choose a lighter lotion. If you live in Tasmania, then a thicker emollient or ointment might be more practical and better for your skin. Now, consider as well moisturizing as a base paint. It should be applied top to toe, at least once a day, but better twice a day. And if your eczema is severe, 3 times a day. It doesn't have to be applied regularly, 8-hourly. It has to be before school, before you put your school uniform on, after school, as soon as you get home, and then before bed, top to toe. Always moisturize in the direction of the hair follicles, otherwise you might get a secondary, what we call a folliculitis. However, even if you're so regular with moisturizing and you've done all the things such as avoiding fragranced washes, so you're only using non-fragranced washes in your shower, and you're using bath oil in the bath, if you are in contact with rough clothing or you experience exposure to an environmental trigger, you will flare. You can't control getting sick nor the weather. So what this means is those times you will need to use a topical steroid, otherwise called a flare control cream, which is anti-inflammatory. And we choose the potency depending on how bad your eczema is and where it is, the site. Use intensively. Use it 3 times a day until your eczema is completely clear, and then stop. I also often use what we call hot spot treatment. And this is when patients come back and they get eczema in the same spots time and time again. That tells me that there is underlying inflammation below the skin surface, even if there's no eczema there. So I ask patients or the family members to treat their kids with topical flare control creams twice a day, twice a week, to try and resolve that underlying inflammation so you won't get a recurrence of your skin eczema. Now, topical steroid creams or flare control creams must be prescribed in adequate quantities, otherwise you won't have enough to use. So therefore, ask your doctor to give you what we call authority scripts. You should be getting loads at the same time and multiple repeats, because these creams have to be used like a moisturizer in generous quantities for your eczema to be under control. Another type of flare control cream is called a topical calcineurin inhibitor, sometimes called tacrolimus ointment or pimecrolimus. Elidel is the trade name, and it's often useful for sensitive areas such as the face or the genital region. Now, let's talk about some common myths or misconceptions surrounding eczema. I mean, truly, eczema is the pits. You know that. You're itchy, you're irritable, often uncomfortable, you can't sleep. Many of my patients are so desperate, and why wouldn't you be, that you're willing to try absolutely anything. Everyone has advice for you from your next door neighbor, your mother's group, TikTok, face group. Here are a few common myths that I'd like to dispel, if I may. Number 1, there is no cure for this condition. This is a genetic disease. So we are aiming to clear and control, but at the moment there is no cure. So anyone who tells you that this cream is the magic cure is not right, unfortunately. You will as well not ever grow out of your eczema. It doesn't mean that you won't improve. And in fact, in childhood, every year you do improve to the point where you will forget that you've ever had bad infant eczema. However, what happens is when your skin is great after that early period of infancy and childhood, then you become a mum and you have to hand wash a lot and you're sleep deprived and you're stressed and you're in touch with contact with lots of detergents and you'll start to get hand dermatitis again. So you've never outgrown it. It's always there ready to come out if triggered by the right factors. The third myth is that organic and natural doesn't always mean best. Many products that are said to be organic and natural have a very strong perfume, which will irritate your skin, but are also super expensive, no more effective than the cheaper products. And so it's really important to find a non-fragranced moisturizer that you like, that you will use, that is reasonable in price, because you've got to use it regularly. We will touch later on the biggest myth of all, which are those surrounding topical steroids. But I'd like to just talk about the last myth here, and that is that eczema is not just a skin condition. It is so much more than that. It goes far deeper than just the skin. It is a systemic disease. If you are a baby, we call that failure to thrive. If you have very severe eczema, you don't thrive. You're systemically challenged. You don't put on weight. You can't, your metabolism is on overdrive because all you're trying to do is to keep your thermoregulation intact. And of course, as an adult or as a teenager, there are consequences of having severe eczema, and that includes anxiety, depression, low self-esteem, inability to attend school, to work. You're often bullied, and it's a real hot mess. However, there are great resources and wonderful treatments available. So I please ask you to reach out because help is very much available. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wong. That really does provide us with a really good foundation on what is eczema, what it's all about, and the management. And we're going to dive a bit more into that and cover that in some more detail. So I'd really like to now hand over to Dr. Sandra Salter, our expert pharmacist, to look at how patients and families can navigate this world of treatment.
Thank you very much, Melanie and Dr. Wong. Incredible to hear those insights and very, very helpful, I'm sure, for everyone listening. And I hope that you can gain some insights from what I'm going to tell you, really from a pharmacy perspective around managing your eczema. I'm sure you've all had lots of experience actually visiting the pharmacy or interacting with the pharmacy because, as we know, eczema is one of the most common conditions that we see in pharmacy. I actually think each person has a very unique journey, and I see it as a little bit like a puzzle, if you like, because on the one hand, we have how you choose your treatment. So there's all of these different influences that will affect how you choose treatment or affect your choices that may not necessarily be evidence-based. And on the other hand, we have what you should perhaps choose, including these very safe foundational measures for managing eczema. So really, I feel that it's fitting these puzzle pieces together so we can make the right choice to get you the best outcome. But when you arrive in the pharmacy, of course, making a choice can be quite daunting and also confusing. This is often a place where our eczema patients start and sadly sometimes stay, staring at this wall of skincare, really unsure of what to do. The wall's very big. There's lots and lots of products. It's really confusing because some are on special and some are expensive. Some are premium. Some have special labels or natural healing powers, might be therapeutic, or others might be clinically proven, whatever that means. But I think what Australia's 2.8 million eczema patients really want is just something to fix their eczema. And it's interesting because people might be looking for a product like one of these, but with these complexities of puzzles and walls, I think what you really need is a plan. And I like to imagine the wall in the pharmacy as the door to better eczema care. In fact, a place where we can start an eczema care plan. We've just heard, we know that eczema is a chronic condition. We can't cure it, but we do have treatments that work well, especially if we start them early and use them properly. But I think in that acceptance of, living with eczema, it's really easy to forget those important, simple measures, things that do have a big impact on your disease control and progression. And so these are the things that we need to do every day. And what I love about this plan, or the genius in this plan, is that it reminds us of that. It's not a medication plan or an action plan. It really, truly is a care plan. I'm just going to have a quick look at that for now. So the Eczema Care Plan has two sides. One side has reminders that we can manage eczema successfully, that we want to keep our skin moisturised and calm, as you've just heard. And so that means first up and all the time using moisturisers and also avoiding the common triggers. That we should use flare treatments early to calm the skin, reduce the itch, speed up healing, restore the microbiome. And it's important of checking in on how you're feeling and how you're going, because it's really tough living with eczema. And one thing I recommend is that people use an app. This is one which is quite good, that helps you track over time what's happening with your eczema. And you can take that to the doctor and show them the long-term effects of your treatments or how you've been going. And I think it's really hard to remember what's been happening, last week, let alone a month ago. So checking in for yourself is really important, and perhaps tracking with an app can help. On the other side of the plan, we have the treatment side. So this is the moisturisers and the flare control treatments that are right for you, specific for you. We have names and even doses of moisturisers. So how much moisturiser we expect you to use every single week. We have specific flare treatments depending on where your eczema is and how bad it is. And what I love about this plan, actually a couple of things extra to add. We have what we call adjuvant therapy, or other therapies, so other treatments that you'll institute every now and again to help keep your eczema under control. And of course, if you do have severe eczema, as you've already heard, there are other options that we can progress to. So we're not just stuck using creams and ointments. But as I say, what I love about this plan is that actually anyone can fill it in. You can go and download this plan yourself from the website, and we'll make sure that that's available. And it was on my previous slide. And you can fill this plan out, take it to everyone in your healthcare team and show them what you've been using, so that we get a good understanding of your journey so far. And indeed, when you are navigating your eczema treatments in the pharmacy, having a plan can help you, whether you've got something written down or whether you start by writing something down with your treatment choices. It helps you know what you're using in a moisturiser and also in a flare control preparation if you are getting one of those as well, and you should be using both. Now, because everyone's journey is quite different and unique, there's no point me recommending a single product or a single brand name, but to cut through the confusion, I guess these are the key things that we should think about when you're in the pharmacy and looking at products. The best moisturiser, as we've already heard, is the one that you will use. So this is the one you like. It might be based on how it feels on your skin. It might be based on cost. There's no difference in any of the good moisturisers. Cost does not always mean that it's better. It's the one that you will use that's the best one. We like products that have ceramides in them because these are part of our natural skin barrier, and we know restoring that barrier is critical. So look for ceramide containing products. Definitely fragrance free, no food ingredients, no dairy in there, no coconut, no nut oils. putting those things onto eczema skin can lead to the development of a food allergy, and that's another burden that you don't need in the rest of your life. And also no essential oils, and avoid these preservatives. They have really long names, but they're MCI and MI preservatives, and these are quite triggering. They can actually lead to allergies all on their own. So avoid those products as well. A simple, bland moisturizer is best. And I like to think of these as your everyday hero. These are the things you're going to use every day. In fact, that's your superpower. Your flare treatments, there's a variety of flare treatments you can obtain in the pharmacy. So we can obtain mild, moderate, and potent flare treatments over the counter. But as we've heard, you can obtain a broader range and increased quantities on prescription. So if you're starting out and you need to get some help from a pharmacist and you haven't yet seen your doctor, please do go and get a flare treatment. But once you're using your flare treatments, your prescription increased quantities is going to be really important. These are your topical corticosteroids, and we do use them at a particular potency, just depending on the site. Really thickened skin needs higher potency steroids, and thinner skin will use milder potency steroids, but that's appropriate for where it is. We must use our topical steroids really early to treat a flare generously, and keep using them until the skin is smooth and itch free, so it's all calmed down and looks normal again. So if your moisturizers are your everyday superpower, then I'd like to think of your flare treatment as your hero, and well, Usain Bolt's my hero. And if we think about the formulation, we need to choose a formulation based on the product itself and also what your skin needs. So ointments are really thick. I'm sure you know that. They're quite greasy. They're excellent for locking in moisture overnight, especially for dry and cracked skin. There are these products called hydrogels. They're not a regular gel. They're a specialized product. They deliver loads of moisture, medicines too. They're not always easy to find, but they feel fabulous on the skin. So if you are looking, make sure you ask for a hydrogel formulation, not a standard gel. Creams are also quite rich, but not as greasy as an ointment. So they're preferred for people who are in hotter climates, or they might have acne-prone skin, and they're great for kids to use during the day when they're in school, and then at night you use your ointment overnight, so you're getting the best of both worlds. Lotions, again, for hotter climates, and gels, standard gels, solutions and sprays. These are more for your hairy areas, or if you are living in a really hot climate, but they don't offer as much moisture as the top three. So I like to think of the formulation as your strategy. So if you combine your everyday superpower with your hero and your strategy, you should actually have your eczema well covered. Now, I really need to make it clear that topical corticosteroids are very, very safe treatments to use. They're the best treatments you can use to get your flare under control. It's really common to feel worried because there is a lot of misinformation out there, and I completely understand that. But we can't treat eczema with moisturizers alone. We do know from real evidence and research that flare treatments are extremely safe, highly effective and safe, even for the youngest people. We also know that uncontrolled eczema is damaging and is unsafe for you. So it seems to me quite straightforward. Use your topical steroids, because we know that if you don't use them early enough or generously enough or for long enough, that you're actually going to have more flares. Now, as a pharmacist, I guess I am always interested and concerned about how medicines are regulated by health agencies. For example, the Therapeutic Goods Administration in Australia, the FDA, European medicines agencies across the world. These organisations share information about medicine safety, including topical steroids. If they were unsafe, they would be pulled from the market. These organisations regulate the safety of them, not social media companies, because they do not collect safety data. They do not know. So please know they are recognised, they are licensed globally as safe therapeutic products. So I guess that's a lot to think about in pharmacy. But hopefully next time we see you, please let the wall become your door to better eczema control. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sandra. That's really helpful with so many products that are available. It's really helpful to have that clear guidance on making informed choices and having a plan. So to expand on that plan and then what we do with that, I'm going to now hand over to our nurse practitioner, Gemma Whitinger, who's going to offer some more detail on the how-to.
Thanks very much, Melanie, and thank you to Dr. Wong and to Dr. Salter for giving such wonderful overview and insight. And it actually covered a lot of what I'll briefly touch on now. So this is really going to just be a summary of what you've heard. So in terms of how we use our flare control treatments and our and other treatments properly, it can be helpful, as Dr. Salter was saying, to think about breaking it down into two different groups. So we can talk about our daily general measures, the things that we can do every day to help keep your skin calm. So things like having your daily shower or bath with a soap-free wash in water that's not too hot, and moisturising within a few minutes of hopping out after the bath or shower, because that's when applying moisturiser to damp skin is when our topical treatments are best absorbed. And, I get a lot of families who are worried about their children going to the pool, to the beach, to the park, to daycare because they come home flared. But, our children and those of us who are living with eczema, we need to, live normally. So it's important that we do those normal things and play in the park and go swimming, etc. But at the end of every day, we rinse off in the bath or shower. And after that, then we apply our topical treatments. And similarly too, playing, sweat is a really common trigger. So play your sporting match, go for your jog. And then when you get home, rinse off in the bath or shower, followed by moisturiser. Same with after swimming, as Dr. Wong said, really important to moisturise, have a shower after swimming, moisturise the whole body, head to toe. Some other things that we can do, some of our other daily general measures, the things that we do every day, even when we don't have an eczema flare. Other things we can think about is not overdressing and not overheating bedrooms with heaters, not wearing too many layers of clothes. Heat is another really common trigger. So there are things, as Dr. Wong was saying, there are triggers that we can avoid, and some of these, triggers are that rinse off after we're sweaty, don't overdress, don't overheat. And there are other triggers like the viral illnesses and vaccinations that are likely to trigger and, activate the immune system and trigger an eczema flare that we can't avoid. So those daily general measures, doing the basics well, are really important. So we don't need to complicate things. We have a daily bath or shower in water that's not too hot with a soap-free wash and apply moisturiser head to toe straight after hopping out after the bath or shower. So they're things that we can do every day well, long-term, even when we don't have an active eczema flare. And then when our eczema flares, that's when when it's time to bring out the flare control treatments, or the helicopter that water bombs the fire. So as soon as the eczema comes, rough skin, itchy skin, etc., it's really important that we start applying those flare control treatments straight away, rather than waiting for the eczema to get bad and then starting to apply it. So we start as soon as the eczema flares, to all the eczema affected areas, not just the worst bits. And we do it every day until the skin feels smooth and itch free, rather than using our flare control treatments for a couple of days and then stopping, then, eczema coming back. So we then restart again. That's how eczema is not going to be well managed. So when the eczema comes, we start our flare control treatment, go every day to all the affected areas until the skin feels smooth and itch free. And then, especially if you've got a history of a story like, I use my treatments, I stop my flare control treatment, and within a couple of days it all comes back. And that's often what people describe as topical steroid withdrawal syndrome. But actually, it's just that we're undertreated the eczema. We haven't put the fire out properly. So we've stopped the treatment too soon. So that's why it's really important to go every day till the skin feels smooth and itch free, rather than for a couple of days when the redness settles. That's when a lot of people are advised or think, oh yeah, it's looking better, so I'll stop my treatment. But actually, you need to keep going every day to all the affected areas till the skin feels smooth and itch free. And then, as Dr. Wong said, weaning can be really helpful in preventing those rebound flares, and treating those hot spots, as you say, twice weekly, can really help prevent those rebound flares. So undertreated eczema is a very big thing in our practice. We see it all day, every day. And actually, people do great once they do the basics well and go back to having the daily bath or shower, using your moisturizer every day, starting the flare control treatment as soon as the eczema flares, using generous amounts every day, treating it properly like a helicopter water bombing a fire. Then you're less likely to need to use your flare control treatments, your topical corticosteroids long term. And another misconception is a lot of people tend to worry about long-term steroid use as being, especially when our children are little, as Dr. Wong was saying, the eczema flares very often. So we're not so worried about the frequency of the eczema flares. What we need to do is make sure we aim for clear skin between eczema flares. So we need to treat the fire, put the fire out properly before the next one comes. And that's how you'll end up with well-controlled skin. The other thing too is that the skin's got very good memory. So those memory T cells remembers the eczema to keep coming back. So what we need to do is start our eczema treatment as soon as the eczema comes back so we can reteach that skin to be normal skin again. And what we'll find is even when our children are little, or people might have frequent flares, what will happen is every time the eczema comes, we restart our treatment generously, properly, proactively, not partially treating using tiny amounts to only the worst bits. Treat it properly, proactively. What we will find is that over time, we'll get longer periods, longer intervals between eczema flares. And that also leads me to, some milder eczema will clear really quickly, within a week. Some milder areas will be clear, but some of those thickened lichenified areas might take 4 to 6 weeks to heal. So we don't worry so much about the length of time we're using the topical steroid for. It's really use it properly until the skin feels smooth and itch-free. Now, if you're if you're following your care plan and you're using your prescribed creams and there's no significant improvement within 2 to 4 weeks, then I'd be talking with my treating clinician saying, I'm following the plan, but it's not significantly improving, because we know that we should see significant improvement within 2 to 4 weeks. So that can be helpful. That can be a helpful guide. We would want to see, we've just said that the eczema might take 4 to 6 weeks to melt, those thickened areas of eczema away, but we certainly should see significant improvement within a few weeks. So that can be, so I find it can be really helpful, the timely follow-up, treating clinicians, if we do some phone follow-up and a written treatment plan, a written care plan can be really helpful. So that's really about the flare control treatments, the creams and the daily general measures, our daily bath or shower and the moisturising. And then sometimes we'll need things like wet dressings to help. So wet dressings can be really helpful if sleep's disturbed, where we're seeing a bit of slow improvement with our flare control treatments. We can do wet dressings, which really help improve quality of sleep and really help our flare control treatments to work better and help clear the eczema quicker. In summary, I would say the most important thing is think about doing the basics well. We have a daily bath or shower, followed by moisturiser. And then when we've got an eczema flare, as soon as the eczema comes, we use our flare control treatment. Don't wait till it's bad. Start straight away. Use it generously every day till the skin feels smooth and itch-free, not just looking better. So when the redness settles, don't stop at that point if the skin still feels rough. Continue every day till the skin feels smooth and not itchy. And then if you've been advised to wean, then you follow your treating clinician's advice with the weaning, whether it's every other day for a week or every other day for a week and then twice weekly for a couple of months. I'd suggest following your clinician's advice there, but that wean could be really helpful to stop those rebound flares.
That is really, really helpful. And I'm finding it fascinating. We've got 3 very different health professionals here in different specialities, and the information that we're getting in different ways is really I feel helping give more confidence and more clarity and more understanding on and how to treat and how to deal with this. So thank you for that. Um, and I think it really highlights that need for confidence, especially when you're dealing with such a can be very complicated, frustrating condition. And I know Jamie can relate to that. He's got the lifetime long experience with this. So I'd really like to hear now from Jamie. Before we get to Jamie, I know that there's some really interesting questions coming through, and we're going to circle back round to those. So please be patient with us. And let's hear from Jamie and his experience and what he's got to share with us tonight too.
Thanks, Melanie. I wish I had these wonderful angels around when when I first started treatment with eczema. Um, yeah, basically, with eczema, I had it from a really young age. Um, there was not much help around. There was not much support. The doctors and people in the business did their very best, but it was limited. So I flared up as a young child, right up until I was about 8 or 9. It cleared up to a point where it was manageable and life was sort of okay. And then around 12, 13 and hit puberty, and it was 10, 15 years of hell and trying to figure out what was going on. And at the time, I'm 52 now, so it was a long time ago. The treatments were just hit and miss. It was trial and error. Not really many people knew. I was in and out of Royal North Shore, in and out of Royal Prince Alfred, places that did their very best with wet bandages and wraps and all the things that we know now as tried and tested. But there was no consistency. There was no balance to that. And it was really challenging until I got to the point for myself where I said that was it. I was fed up with eczema determining my life. It's one of those things that unless you either have it or you're assisting a child with it, you don't really understand of how much it consumes your thoughts in just everyday life. Just going to the beach, you've got to think about how am I going to navigate that. And I look back now, at the time when you go through it, you just get through it. But I look back now and I think this is why I love doing these seminars, is that for kids that are going through it now, if we can help them, because when I went through it, you just got through, you managed the best you could. But now I look back and I think it determined everything. It determined my relationships, my jobs, my parents, the relationships with them. Absolutely every decision in your life comes back to, and I think Dr. Wong said it perfectly in The Failure to Thrive. It governed everything I did, and it was always there, even to the point of having a conversation with someone, and all you can think about is, I need to scratch. Very simple. So now for me, the challenges to find the right treatment was the hardest part. And from what I can see here tonight is the amazing people that are working with patients and have the right angles and puzzles, as Dr. Salter said, to put it together, because we're all different. We're all, mine I thought was very extreme. And until I connected with Eczema Support Australia and Melanie through my partner, I didn't realize that there was many people like myself that was dealing with. I thought I was the worst in the world. So bit of woe is me there. But once I connected with a lot of other people, you find out that you're not. So the challenges for me to find the right treatment in the early days were very difficult because the resources just weren't there. The treatments weren't there. They were very hit and miss. That impacted on my trust and patient clinical relationships, because I felt like they didn't know. I felt like a guinea pig. I felt like every time I went to the doctor, we would restart the same process. And I would think, here we go again. I'm going to start from day dot, because there was no plan, there was no history of what we'd tried. Fast forward to where we are today, and the amount of resources that we have, and from what we can very much see tonight, the Eczema Care plans and all those things are so helpful, and the weight of lifted off your shoulders in connecting with other people in like Eczema Support Australia, other sufferers that you can just have that conversation with and say, I understand, I've been there, I've tried it, I've done it, I feel what you're going through. That's a huge weight off in itself. Then on top with all the other resources. So yeah, I can't thank everyone enough for what they do and the help that they provide, and the future's pretty bright for eczema sufferers.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jamie. So well said. Sharing your experience like that, I think many people tonight will be able to relate to the frustration and the uncertainty, but to hear that hope and to know that there is light at the end of the tunnel, and we are making some really good inroads, and we've got a lot of people around us now for support and good resources. So I'm going to share some of those resources with everyone soon. I want to circle back a bit later to some of the questions and maybe some of the additional concerns that we've got, because I thought now would actually be a good time to really take a moment to talk about what we know weighs heavily on many families and individuals with eczema, and that's the mental and emotional toll of the condition. I think we've all touched on it already tonight. We know it's not just an outward skin condition, it's systemic, and it can impact people's self-esteem, sleep, overall mental well-being, that constant itch, the relentless care routine. It can lead to so much frustration, isolation, anxiety, and depression, particularly when the flares are severe or persistent. It's something we hear about quite often at Eczema Support Australia, and it's why we're so passionate about not just treating the skin, but also supporting the person. So I'm going to share some resources in a moment, but I just wanted to quickly again go around our panel of experts and just ask, I think we've just heard from Jamie, so I'd just like to ask, maybe back to you, Gemma, say, what advice do you give to families, especially parents who are feeling emotionally exhausted and overwhelmed in managing their child's eczema?
Yeah, so firstly, I would say reach out for help. Just please don't feel you're on your own, because we're certainly here to help you. A good place to start is your GP. Eczema Support Australia will point you in the right direction. So yeah, don't go alone. Reach out for help, and that's certainly one of the things that we really encourage our families to do. If you've got any questions at any time, please contact us so that we can address what the issue is and that it doesn't left unanswered. So I think the first thing is reach out for help. And then the other thing is, as clinicians, we need to be really mindful that our families, our patients, our children that we're seeing, as you say, they're often sleep deprived, they're worried, marital relationships might be tricky as well, because we're so tired. We've got children who are not sleeping, can't go to school properly and learn properly. So I think as clinicians, we need to make sure that we give really realistic management plans that are not too overwhelming for people. And, sometimes we need to break it down. So for these next couple of weeks, we're going to use our flare control treatments and some wet dressings. And then when we touch base with you again in a couple of weeks, we can then, especially if it's someone who's prone to skin infections, we can then talk about starting bleach baths, So I think it's about, giving realistic management plans and regimes, making sure it's, otherwise we're just adding to the overwhelming feel of, what people are dealing with.
Yeah.
So manageable bite-sized chunks, and reach out for help, because we're here to help you.
Yeah, very practical. And Dr. Wong, from your perspective as a dermatologist, how do you support patients who are really clearly struggling, not just with their skin, but the emotional impact of living with eczema?
I think it's really important just to listen. And so it's a consultation that isn't going to be quick, because you have to actually find out what is so distressing at this particular time for this particular patient or family. And do listening, and then you'll be able to find out what practically you can do. So clinically target what is most distressing at the moment, but also practical things like give certificates so that they can have a week off work, or do appropriate certificates so that they can put it into NESA and they don't have to worry about an assessment for year 11 and 12, and do bite-size treatment choices, just as Gemma said, so it's not overwhelming. And lastly, to make sure you follow up, because this is not going to be a flash in the pan sort of exercise. You need to ring 2 days later, you need to ring again 2 weeks later and get them to come in 4 weeks later. So know that you're there for the long haul and the journey.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. And Dr. Salter, did you want to add anything to that discussion around emotional, mental well-being?
It's something that we do see in the pharmacy. I've had people come in who will say, I'm at the lowest point. I'm even trying product X. I won't name any products here today, but a product which they already know and indicate is not really the right product to use, but they are stuck in a cycle of thinking, I'll try anything because it's all become too hard. And it's when you break it down to those simple measures, the simple concepts, the things that we overlook because they are so simple and we forget about them. You remind people, come back and see me on Monday and tell me how you're going. Let's keep track using an app so we can actually objectively measure what's happening. Then you might get a lot of confidence in that person because they can see, actually on Tuesday I felt pretty good. Wednesday or Thursday might have been bad, but by Friday then I'd started to turn the corner again, and on Saturday and Sunday I'm on the up, and they can see that treatments are starting to work. So there's a bit of positive hope in there, and that helps people feel like, okay, yep, we're on the right path now. So I think it's all about supporting them, being available, listening and being an ear, and giving very clean and simple advice as we've heard.
Thanks. And I think on that note of the emotional support and mental well-being, I'd just like to share my screen quickly, because we have recently launched a psychology pilot program that everyone here is welcome to access. It is free. And we'll also drop a link. Can we drop a link, maybe not into the chat, Marion? I think we can drop a link into the chat or the Q&A. If not, we will share this with you. Where's my share screen from? We will share with you via a follow-up email. Hopefully this works. Can you see this screen here? So we've got the free psychology, and it's just a self-referral form. You get 3 free sessions, and you can read all about that when we send that through. But while I'm sharing my screen, if I can make this work, I'd probably like to also share with you a little bit more about the practical tools and resources that we have, particularly our new ones, through the new interventions that we've created through the Quality Use of Medicines Alliance. Things like the Eczema Care online toolkit. We've already heard all about the Eczema Care plan. We've got new fact sheets and guides, including a new one launched yesterday in multiple languages, but also videos. If you go into resources, it's probably going to be the easiest way to find things. You'll find fact sheets, things for babies and children, teenagers. We do have an adults page. We've got to pop in there too. We've got helpful links and video resources. So have a look around. If you can't find something, you can always reach out to us. But just also know that these resources were developed in partnership with leading dermatologists like Dr. Li Wang, pharmacists like Dr. Sandra Salter, nurses like Gemma Whitinger, GPs, and patient voices, importantly. And they're all freely available. So we'd encourage you to use those tools, have a look around, and reach out to us if you can't find something. So I'll just stop that share there. And I know we've still got lots of questions and things to go to. Before we get to that, I just wanted to just share another couple of quick polls with you. I think after hearing what everybody's been telling us, I'd like to just ask you a little bit more about your confidence now. I know we've got more questions, but if I can just get you to tell us how you're feeling after hearing all this tonight. Let us know how confident you're feeling about eczema management. Wow. Okay, I can see this, you can't. It's looking very encouraging. I'll give that just a few more moments for people to have a think, enter in their vote on how they're feeling. We know we're not going to solve the whole world tonight, but hopefully it will be a good start. Brilliant. All right, I think we've got that. We're done. All right, in poll, share the results. Okay. I've got one more little poll to do before we go tonight, but that's a really good position for us to be in right now, I think. So I think now we've got some time for those who can hang around, to circle back to looking at some of the questions and concerns that have come up, and to also just any further comments on, we know there's so much misinformation out there. And I'd particularly like to hear again from Dr. Wong about what other misinformation that you may be aware of. But let me just feel free to unmute yourselves and jump into this. But as we're doing that, I'm going to quickly ask a couple of questions while you have a think. I know we talked a lot about topical corticosteroids, flare control creams, topical steroids. They're all referring to the same thing. So that was one question that we had there, when there's different terms for the same thing. There are different types of topical corticosteroids, but we like to call them flare control creams because that's what they do. And here's a question I think is probably good for Dr. Salter. Talking about creams, is it true that aqueous cream is no longer recommended as an emollient for eczema moisturizer due to SLS presented that can cause skin irritation? Did you want to jump in on that one, Sandra?
So we don't recommend any products containing sodium lauryl sulfate or sodium laureth sulfate. It's extremely drying and irritating to the skin. So correct, we don't use aqueous cream. It's not really an emollient anyway. We find that the emollients tend to have ingredients that hold moisture in the skin. So if you're thinking about making a cake and you've got a whole bunch of things like eggs and sugar and flour to make your cake, it's the same when we make an emollient. We need to have things that are called humectants, or things that attract moisture into the skin to hold moisture there. And SLS does not do that, and it's very irritating to the skin. So aqueous cream is not used. We do use other simple moisturizers, sorbolene and glycerin, because glycerin is a humectant that does hold moisture in the skin. So if you're looking for a really cost-effective option, that is a good cost-effective option. But otherwise, as I've said, the ceramide containing options are very good, because ceramides are one of the natural substances in your skin that contribute to what we call the lipid bilayer, which is the layer that helps hold the moisture and integrity of your skin together. So really important to try and find those ingredients and to avoid anything containing SLS. It is in washes and other things as well. So good pick up there.
Thank you. Excellent. And I have a question here that Dr. Wong or Gemma could probably answer quite quickly. I think it's a really good question. What if it means using flare control cream for longer than 2 weeks? Because I know 2 weeks is often what's thought as the time limit. What does it mean if you need to use flare control cream for longer than 2 weeks?
I think that we shouldn't think of it in terms of time, that we think of it in terms of complete clearance. So if you're continuing to use for 2 weeks, but you're using a far too weak topical steroid, then you're going to be needing far longer. You should use the correct potency topical steroid and using it intensively until it's completely clear. The other thing is that if you're continuing to need to use it for longer, but you're using the appropriate topical steroid strength, then what are the triggers that are continuing to be around? Like, have you been sick for those 2 weeks? Are you doing the HSC? Have you had other things that are continuing to trigger? So don't worry about time. Just worry about using it intensively and using the right strength until it's completely clear.
And I've got another follow-up question to that from somebody else, actually. But if you can answer this one, any guidance on how long to do the twice weekly or maintenance preventative steroid treatment for?
So I generally say twice a day, twice a week for usually 3 months, and then we reassess.
Yep. Great. Thank you. Gemma, I have a question on here as well about, does a child with eczema need allergy testing? So I know that you work a lot with the allergies as well.
That's a really, really good question. So typically no. Eczema. So we wouldn't recommend routine allergy testing for children with eczema. If, for example, a parent presents with a history of a child developing hives, facial swelling, vomiting within 30 minutes of eating well-cooked boiled egg, then that certainly are, they're signs of an immediate IgE allergic reaction that we would recommend seeing an immunologist for and potential allergy testing. But lots of people present to our eczema clinics wanting or wondering, should I have allergy testing in the context of eczema? But we know lots of things causes eczema to flare. And so we wouldn't recommend allergy testing to identify what's triggering those eczema flares. What we need to do is manage the eczema well. And then if there are signs of an allergic reaction, then we'll consider allergy testing. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
I think it does. Yeah.
Yeah.
Terrific. Another question for you, Gemma, in the how-to side of things. Would you still apply moisturizer all over in conjunction with flare control creams, and what order do you do them?
Yep, that's a really great question. So the first thing is we put our topical corticosteroid, our flare control creams, to eczema-affected areas, not to the whole body. So the flare control treatments go to all eczema-affected areas, those rough, red, itchy areas, and moisturiser goes top to toe, goes head to toe. So that's the two main difference there. Now, in terms of which order you do, it doesn't matter. There's no right or wrong. Some people will get out of the bath or shower, pat the skin dry, apply the topical corticosteroid, the flare control treatment to all eczema areas, and then moisturise head to toe. And other people may prefer to get out of the bath or shower, pat the skin dry, put the moisturiser on, and then do flare control treatment. So it doesn't really matter. If what you're doing is working, then keep doing it. What we sometimes recommend is often, we talk about feeling the skin. So if you can feel any rough skin, that rough skin is active eczema that needs treating. So if you've hopped out of the bath or shower and you apply moisturiser head to toe, sometimes it can be tricky to feel the rough areas of skin. So we'd recommend putting the topical steroid to all those eczema areas and then moisturise head to toe. But it doesn't matter if you do it the other way around and it's working. So some of our dermatologists many of them will recommend using a topical steroid first, then moisturiser, but a couple will recommend the other way around. So it doesn't really matter either way as long as it's working. Dr. Wong, would you agree? Do you have anything else you'd like to add there?
I think that, yes, some will say one, and, it's tomatoes. I generally like top to toe moisturizing first, and then using on top. And because especially after a bath and your skin is slightly damp, it will increase the penetration of the moisturizer. And then if your skin is hydrated, that will also then increase the penetration of the overlying topical steroid.
Yeah, and the important thing to remember, we often will say, you don't need to wait between the flare control treatment and the moisturizer. Just get them both on because of that reason. You want to apply them to damp skin. So don't sometimes people might hear that you need to wait half an hour between applications. Then you run the risk of you're tired, you go to bed, and you've not then applied your flare control treatments. Yeah.
And we've had some other similar questions to that, and I've just put in a chat with one of the answers about helpful links on our site. We've got some great videos actually by Gemma on how to apply things like wet wraps and to give you that visual of what to do as well with applying creams. So jump on the website, go to helpful links, and you'll find those. I'm just scrolling through some of the questions. We have some very specific individual sort of medical questions, which we probably can't answer tonight in this sort of forum. But hopefully we can try and help follow up and connect you where need be. So I'm just going to scroll through for some more general questions. I think we've answered questions. Some of these questions have been answered through the discussions that we've had already. But here's a good general question about probiotics for eczema. This could open up a whole other conversation as well. I know we've got a lot to discuss around probiotics and fixing the gut microbiome being the cure-all for everything. I'm going to open it up to our health professionals to comment on that.
So I'm happy to just provide some context on probiotics, certainly from the perspective of what we teach our university students in this space, and also what we share with our people in the pharmacy who come in to see us. Probiotics have become extremely popular in general. There are so many different brands, so many different types, so many different mixtures of microorganisms that are available now, and they are being proposed as a quick cure or solution to solving our gut microbiome. There's no question that improving our gut microbiome is really important for human health. We know there's a direct relationship between the gut microbiome, multiple chronic diseases, and also with our skin microbiome, but they're different biota, they're different types of organisms. The one thing I like to say to students is it's not just probiotics that we think about. We think about prebiotics, probiotics, synbiotics, and postbiotics. The only one of those that you can actually buy, there's two that you can buy. One is the probiotic. That's the organisms that you might swallow in a tablet or a capsule you buy from your pharmacy, or a product you might buy that's a mixture like a Yakult sort of a drink or something like that. Prebiotics are actually the things that the probiotics live on. So that's what you eat. So you buy that as well. Synbiotics and postbiotics. Synbiotics is a combination of prebiotics and probiotics, and postbiotics, which is one of the most important parts, are the breakdown products that prebiotics and probiotics lead to. So, and those breakdown products help us be healthy. They create things that our body needs through the gut. So it's a lot more complicated than just taking a capsule that claims it's the right mix of microorganisms. Because if you put these are supposed to be your friends, right? These are your friendly pets living in your body, in your gut. If we feed them the wrong food, if we feed them the wrong prebiotics, they won't be happy, and we'll get the bad pets overgrowing again. So it's not as simple as just swallowing a capsule. There's much more to it. Probiotics are important, but it's not a simple solution.
And Dr. Wong, in relation to additional research on gut microbiome and eczema and what we can do on a practical basis now about it, what's your input there?
The evidence at the moment the evidence at the moment is not strong for regularly taking a probiotic. There's lots of evidence about moisturizing and use of topical steroids. We also know that there are certain strands of probiotics that in the literature might be helpful for eczema. So not only do you just take, you can't just take a simple probiotic, it's got to be the right strain or strand. And so it's, as Sandra says, it's far more complex. And if I would caution spending a lot of money on this and spend more money on moisturizing and using treatments that we know there is evidence and convincing evidence that it will be helpful.
Thank you. Got a good question here, I think we've touched on briefly, but I'm not positive now. Someone asked, my baby has had a bad flare, a patch on his arm, which is no longer red. It's smooth now, not itchy, I believe. So they've stopped putting on the flare control cream, the steroid, but it still looks brown. Will the pigmentation just improve over time, or will skin go back to its usual color?
So that is called post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation, which can also occur on the opposite side, and that's called post-inflammatory hypopigmentation. So after you have very acute inflamed skin or eczema, it can temporarily take away your pigmentation and cause white patches, or it can cause hyperpigmentation, and both of which are scarring temporarily your skin, and it is due to eczema and how inflammatory it is rather than the use of topical steroids. And that is a common myth, that topical steroids cause brown patches or white patches. In fact, it's the eczema itself.
Thank you for clearing that up. All right, Dr. Salter, there's a question here about steroid-free flare-up creams, and there are some, I won't name products at the moment, but there are some creams that are marketed as flare-up creams and some creams that are marketed as steroid-free flare control creams as well. Are they useful?
So I think what the question might be referring to is the other types of anti-inflammatory creams that we have available to manage eczema.
Yeah, I think this one's talking about over-the-counter creams, not so much the not so much things like Elidel,
things like flare up bath oils,
QV
flare up wash,
but then
maybe.
there's QV flare up. There's as one example, and I know that there's some other creams that are marketed as flare control cream, steroid free, but they're not a prescription item.
Right. So so in this situation, the question is more asking, are products that are labelled as flare control or flare treatment creams, if they don't contain steroids, going to be effective to treat a flare? And the simple answer is no. There are prescribed anti-inflammatory options which are non-steroids. They're not usually as effective, and they usually only work on very specific types of eczema. So the best flare-up cream is always, or flare treatment is always, a topical corticosteroid. Anything that's called a flare treatment non-steroid is really just marketing that's preying on the insecurities or concerns of parents, and I think that's really unhelpful for families. It's more helpful to know that the best treatments are your flare controls that are topical corticosteroids combined with your moisturizer. Many of those steroid-free flare treatments will actually be good moisturizers and probably also include ceramides in them. So there's nothing wrong with using them, but don't use them for flares. Use them in combination with an appropriate flare treatment.
Right. And another question around treating the itch. Is giving your child an antihistamine for itching recommended? And I know we have the answer to this in our care plan, I believe, but who would like to answer that one?
I'll give you a pharmacist perspective, and I'm sure Dr. Wong and Gemma will also have the same perspective, and that is that the evidence is really not that clear that antihistamines can help with the eczema type itch. Sometimes people feel that they would like to use a sedating antihistamine to help them get through the night because it's so itchy overnight. Those antihistamines tend not necessarily to treat the itch, but tend to just have highly sedative properties, which is not something we want to do regularly. So long-term antihistamines don't treat itch. Topical corticosteroids are fabulous for managing itch. They really get the itch under control, but I'll let Dr. Wong add anything, or Gemma as well.
You said it perfectly.
Right.
Yeah.
We've got lots more questions here. I'm not going to be able to get to all of them tonight, but I'm going to end with one really big question, often the elephant in the room. And I'm going to hand it back over to you, Dr. Wong. Straightforward question here. Is TSW a myth? Well, it sounds like a straightforward question, probably to the person asking it. It's a really difficult question.
Yeah, it really is the big fat elephant in the room, and it's good that we are ending with a big bang. And that is the safety of topical steroids and TSW, or topical steroid withdrawal. So we know what is out there of what people say about topical steroids, that it thins the skin, it causes growth retardation, it causes white discoloration of the skin, and we know that's simply not true. The other misconception is that your skin gets dependent on the steroids, and as Gemma said, that's just not true. And in fact, what that means mostly 99.9% of the time is that you're just inadequately treating your eczema. So topical steroid withdrawal is incredibly rare. It's seen on the face in adult females when a very potent topical steroid is used on normal skin, so not eczema skin, but normal skin, for 6 to 12 months continuously. So it is incredibly rare and a very different clinical presentation than normal eczema. It is a burning eruption as opposed to a scaly, itchy eruption like we know eczema to be. So as we said in the past, that when we see patients with what they think is topical withdrawal syndrome, it is in fact inadequately treated eczema. If I can say once again, topical steroids are so safe. On the other hand, if you don't treat eczema with topical steroids or these flare control creams, not only are you miserable and itchy, but you can then run into serious problems like secondary skin infections, and at times, and at worst, requiring hospitalization. I really think we live, Melanie, in a time of just great knowledge. Information is so accessible to everyone, to patients and to doctors alike. And I really encourage my patients to read about eczema, their condition, to come along with lots of questions to appointments, and I attempt to answer them. And if I can't, I'll get back to them. But always, crucially, it is important to talk based on evidence, not on hearsay, not on rumors, and certainly not based on fear, like this TikTok phenomenon that we have now surrounding topical steroid withdrawal.
Thank you so much for answering that really, really big question. And I know we've got so many more questions, and we knew this would happen. So what I would encourage you to do is please chase us up, and we'll try and follow each of you up about your questions and direct you to answers, or direct you to places where you can get the answers for your questions if we haven't answered them tonight. Before we go, I do have one more quick poll, because I think it's important to just reflect on why isn't that working? Hang on, sorry. I don't know if that's going to work now, because I knew I'd have one technical problem tonight. It would be great to be able to just reflect on your one key takeaway, and if I can launch this, I can't launch it. All right. I'm going to let you answer that one yourself, with just in your own mind. Have a think about what your biggest takeaway from this webinar might be. Is it about understanding the importance of treating eczema early and consistently, or it could be about confidence with flare control cream, safety and effectiveness. Your key takeaway might be something like a better understanding on how to navigate eczema treatments and products, or recognizing mental health impact of eczema and managing that, and hopefully also where to find trusted evidence-based eczema resources and support. So sorry about my technical issue with that. But before we finish, I would like just to also take a moment to say a real heartfelt thank you to our amazing panelists. Thank you so much for your honesty, your knowledge, and your ongoing commitment to supporting Australians impacted by eczema. So, because I can't do that poll, but we can hear from you. To wrap up, I'd love to hear one final takeaway message from each of you, perhaps a quick 10 seconds of advice, encouragement, or insight for our audience. Marion as well, I'd love to hear from you. Gemma, can we start with you? Have you got one final takeaway message for us?
Sure. Mine would be to do those basics well. When there's no active eczema, continue with those daily general measures, that using your moisturiser every day, and don't wait till the eczema's really flared to then start treating. Start as soon as the eczema comes, because you're much more likely to get the eczema under control really quickly, and you'll use far less topical steroid longer term. Yeah, so do those basics well and start treatment early.
Thanks, Gemma. Mei Chen, Dr. Wong?
Don't be fearful to treat, because you can change your life and you can actually then live a life.
Perfect. Jamie, I'm going to jump over to you following that.
For me, it's these wonderful, like yourself, Melanie, wonderful people on that are here to help. Use the support. We've never had so much knowledge and dedicated people to help patients and moisturise. There's benefits. Look, 52. It's all right.
Fabulous. Dr. Salter?
My tip is moisturisers are your everyday superpower. Flare treatments are your hero, and think about your formulations that you're using, because that's your strategy. Use your everyday superpower every day. Use your hero quickly when you need it, and use the right strategy to get on top of your eczema, and you will, and you can. You will get there. It's possible.
Thank you. And Marion, would you like to share, as a listener, your perspective or your key takeaway from tonight, putting you on the spot?
Yes, you are. Well, I'm not just a director of Eczema Support Australia. I also have lived experience of eczema from a very young age. And I guess the key takeaways are, for me, the importance of, especially what we are doing here tonight and at Eczema Support Australia, in terms of connection, evidence-based advice, knowing what to do, just the proper education. There are such dedicated people there today. There's so much evidence-based information. You know, Dr. Google won't help you. Dr. Google will send you down rabbit holes and totally confuse this scenario. You need to look at the trusted evidence-based information and what the experts, because they are the experts, have said, and that's coming from someone who has lived the dream of eczema, so to speak. So yeah, thank everyone here tonight as well for everything, and I'm sorry we didn't get to all your questions, but we're just an email away following this if you need further information.
So well summed up,
Melanie.
Thank you. And so yes, if tonight sparked more questions for you, please do visit our website. You will get the evidence-based resources there and the care plan, downloadable fact sheets, care plans, videos. You can rewatch this webinar when we send it back out to you, and just keep connected with us and do speak to your healthcare professional. So on behalf of us here tonight, thank you again for joining us, and we hope that you're feeling more confident, supported and empowered on your eczema journey. So thank you. Take care. Good night.